Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm thrilled to have with me today Robyn M Bolton. She is the founder and chief navigator at Mile Zero, as well as having a very extensive background in lots of innovation companies, lots of innovation departments, and therefore I'm really thrilled to find out her experience about what it takes to actually build innovation capabilities in companies across the size scale. Robyn, it's wonderful having you here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. So, Robyn, for people who don't know about you and the work that you do, could you just give us a very brief background as to where you got started and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So I've essentially spent my entire career in innovation, starting off straight out of university, went to work for Procter & Gamble at a time when the company was investing heavily in innovation. And so I started work on an innovation team. We were working on two products that had code names DD1 and M2000. And those two products are now known as Swiffer and Swiffer WetJet. So spent several years being an entrepreneur, creating, a new brand and a new product within a big company, and, have the scars to show for that. From P&G, spent a little bit of time with Walmart learning how to innovate within a retailer. This is through the partnership that P&G and Walmart has. Then went, kind of study, got my MBA at Harvard, went to work at Boston Consulting Group, and then spent a big chunk of time at Innosight, which is the innovation firm that was founded by Clayton Christensen. And that's where, I got to go very deep into both the theory and the application of not just disruptive innovation, but all of the elements of how to use innovation to create value in a corporate setting. And after about 9 years there, I struck out on my own, founded Mile Zero, and here we are focused on innovation, helping corporate innovators, and doing it in an incredibly practical and actionable way so that it sticks.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping we're going to get some of those practical, actionable things from the podcast today. But I'd like to, if I may, start back at one of the things you mentioned right at the beginning, and that is your time at P&G and especially at Swiffer. And it's because Swiffer in the innovation community is held up as one of these perfect examples of, some people say design thinking, some people say customer research, but this one aha eureka moment that seemed to change the design and inspire the final design. Can you tell us how it actually happened and whether or not that story is true at all, or what the journey was like for you and your team?
Yes, so I'm sure that anyone who has been part of creating something knows that there's always a kernel of truth in the origin story, but the true origin story, as you alluded to, is always far more complex and far less tidy. So certainly the story around, I think it was the coffee grounds and noticing how a woman had to bend over, gather up the coffee grounds, led to this aha moment. The truth of the matter is that while that did happen for Swiffer, what we now know as Swiffer WetJet, was actually in development years before, because the insight was really around mopping is an awful chore. And, with Mr. Clean as one of the brands that P&G has in its stable, how can we improve that, leveraging, honestly, the Mr. Clean brand? And it was actually through, I think, one of P&G's salespeople based in Japan that they saw a product made by Kao, K-A-O, that is essentially the Swiffer sweeper. And knowing that P&G was working on an implement for floor cleaning, Swiffer WetJet, they send across some samples and say, hey, what do you think of this? It uses some woven technology. We've got that in paper. What do you think? And really, it was just a race of R&D development cycles that Swiffer got developed first, got launched first, still all around that insight of how we clean floors sucks with brooms and mops so we can do better. But that kind of one aha eureka moment, while it did happen, it wasn't the nexus of all things Swiffer.
I always love the fact that people think that the best ideas come in this blaze of glory out of the mind of a genius, and they forget the 10 years of effort that happened before that one moment that people seem to remember.
Yeah, and the whole team of people in all different parts of the world with all different perspectives, kind of bringing their experiences and their thoughts to the table. And there is that moment when the dots are connected, but it's certainly not a lone genius in a room.
Absolutely. So let's go from history to more of the present. I know that since your time at Innosight and now with Mile Zero, you're helping other companies really improve their own innovation capabilities. What do you see as some of the main challenges that you find when you're working with these companies?
Yeah. The biggest challenge that I find is refocusing people. From a lot of companies come in and they say, we're not innovating because we don't have ideas. And that's just flat out not true. Companies of every size are filled with ideas because they're filled with people, and people, we naturally are creative and we naturally have ideas for how to do things better. The challenge with innovating in a company is leadership. Innovation is a leadership problem. It's not an idea problem. And I'm not saying that to pick on leaders. Being an executive, being a leader at a company is a really hard job. And what innovation requires is essentially for leaders and executives to do the opposite of everything they've done before. So they have become successful by delivering on the near term, whether that's the quarter or the year, by keeping costs down, by driving out risk and uncertainty. And then along comes what you have to do for innovation, which is embrace risk and manage it, but you can't eliminate it. It's going to be years before you get results. So you're not delivering anything this quarter other than learnings and progress, but there's no dollars hitting the top or the bottom line. And, cost cutting, you don't know the ROI on an innovation right away. So you need to spend to learn. And that doesn't feel efficient. So the biggest challenge that any company faces is really getting leadership that is supportive and patient and engaged in the right way in innovation, to give it that room and the support to thrive and to grow and to spread and to eventually deliver those returns.
I know you worked with what some people consider the greatest innovation mind of recent times, Professor Clayton Christensen, during your time at Innosight. What did you find were the ways of addressing these challenges back then when you were working there, and have you seen the best practice, if we should call it that, but the most effective methods which actually work maybe change over time, and what is it now at the moment?
Yeah, when I started at Innosight, the zeitgeist was really create an innovation team within your company and go do design thinking. So go, ethnography, immerse with your customers, identify their problems, brainstorm, quickly prototype, and get stuff out there. And it was very, innovation was very isolated in an organization, isolated to the team, and very project driven. And the expectation was, oh, you're going to move faster and more efficiently than the regular business. So we can give you 2 people $10, and in 6 months, you'll have a 250 million revenue business. And it's, if with 2 people and $10, I could build a 250 million revenue business, I would be doing that. I would not be in this company or doing consulting. And so naturally, because the expectations were so out of line with reality, kind of eventually the innovation teams faded away. And then it became the next shiny object around partnering with startups and joint ventures or corporate venture capital. And in between was, the great era of the innovation theater of we will do a hackathon and a Shark Tank, and none of that works because, again, kind of leadership. When you make innovation an event, it feels nice because there's a start and a stop, but the patience isn't there, the commitment isn't there. And so leadership can, again, no disrespect, but pat themselves on the back saying, we're doing all of the innovation stuff, it's just not working out. What we have shifted to is instead of kind of those models that I talked about, which tended to be one size fits all, I think into more of a recognition of a really big, global company is going to need to innovate differently than a mid-market company, which innovates differently than a startup. And so while at a huge multinational company, you may need to create innovation teams, it's not just one team that is going to innovate for the company. You need to really build it as a function, or like P&G did when I was there, you had an innovation team in each business unit. For the mid-market teams or the mid-market businesses, you're still at a size where everyone can be involved in innovation in some degree. And so how do you design a capability within the company that enables everybody to participate appropriately in the innovation process so that you continue to keep that as part of your culture and how you operate, similar to when you were small, like a startup?
I mean, that all sounds perfect in practice. In theory.
In theory.
In practice, though, in practice, it's not that simple. And if I can share my perspective, what I found is across more or less every company, there's a set of capabilities which you need. And those capabilities are going to be different based on who's doing which aspect of innovation. So the capabilities of the project team designing and doing the customer research is going to be different than the people probably in charge of the budget and managing progress. And that's going to be different from the people who are setting the strategy and setting the goals and making resources available. And what I especially see as being different is the skills required to develop and design and then actually execute and scale. And one of the reasons why labs and hackathons seem to not work very well is if you just build up capabilities of people who are very good at the front end of innovation, the ideation, the design, the MVPs, those in general are not the same people who are going to be able to execute and especially change the core business of an existing company. You and I were talking at the beginning about the importance of change and how challenging that is. What did you mean by that? What is change and why is it so challenging for innovation projects?
You're spot on. The skills of the people at the front end are different than the skills of the people in the middle, different than the skills of the people at the end, and of any sort of innovation experience. And so much of what has been written about innovation and preached about innovation focuses on, okay, here's the process you need end to end, here's the structure, here's how the team needs to evolve, here's the different functions you need when. And that is necessary but not sufficient. Because what it doesn't take into account is that there are human beings involved along the way. And each of those human beings has different motivations, different aspirations, different expectations, and different perceptions of their role. And so you need to speak to that and build that as much into the process as possible. And so what I often say is, look, as humans, we decide with our hearts, we justify with our heads. And in innovation, you need guts to take action. And so all the processes and structures, that's appealing to our heads. But if we're not engaging our hearts and those emotions, motivations, aspirations, which is where change management comes in, things are going to stop from, going from the beginning, translating to that middle, or translating to that end. And so you need to engage people both emotionally and intellectually throughout the process.
I often like to say that everyone wants change, no one wants to change.
Precisely.
So what is this emotion that's actually holding people back from executing and especially taking on these different parts of the innovation journey?
At the root, I think it's fear. It's fear of the unknown, which is how we are hardwired. Certainly some people are more comfortable kind of facing fear, working with fear. And those are the people that you see on the front end. Those are the people who are the entrepreneurs. Those are the people who are comfortable with the ambiguity of, you know, the fuzzy front end sort of activities. The people, but most people at especially large companies, they're at large companies because they're a security, because their job and how they're successful is by doing the same thing over and over, better, faster, cheaper. And so there's far more known than unknown. And so when they're confronted with more unknown than known, that just, you know, it's fear, it's risk. It's exactly what they have been trained to eliminate. And so you often hear talk about corporate antibodies and how when something new comes in, the antibodies swarm. And, you know, not out of malice, but I think out of love, like a genuine desire to be helpful, love an innovation to death. And so there are a lot of ways that you can help minimize the fear. You can never eliminate it, but you can help minimize it and manage it. And one of my favorite questions to do this is, you know, once you're in a discussion with someone who views their role as kind of protecting the core business, is to ask, what would you need to see to say yes? You know, they're probably designed to say no. They believe they're saying no for all the right reasons. Just switch it. What do you need to see to say yes? Great. Now I know. If I come back with that, are you on board? And it shifts the conversation. It also shifts the mindset to, hey, we're partners in this, and this is going to happen, but, you know, I hear you, and I'm going to go get what you need.
Absolutely. A lot of people feel, especially if there's rungs on the decision-making ladder, a lot of people feel it's their duty to find reasons to say no. And if they can't say yes to absolutely everything, then it is a clear no. So that is absolutely why they're called these corporate antibodies, and there's a lot of people who fit into that category. Robyn, you had this background at all of these exciting companies, but now you're obviously working at Mile Zero. Tell us a little bit about that. What sort of work are you doing with companies to help them actually build up these innovation capabilities?
Right. So the vast majority of my work at Mile Zero is focused on helping companies build an innovation capability, to get away from innovation as an event to innovation as a discipline and a way of doing business. And importantly, figuring out how to do that in a way that works for their company, for their culture, for their people. Because innovation, all the processes, structures, it is not one size fits all. And it's really important to adapt it for the culture. So how do we put in kind of those head things, the process, the structure, and then how do we engage people in living those out, in building those skills? And what does that process of really change management, engagement, training look like to get things to stick? And, you know, it sounds in some ways rather obvious, like, of course, you need to do all of that. But in my experience, not a lot of that gets done, that focus on the human element. And one quick story about the importance of really customizing, you know, for a company, because it can make the difference between success and failure, is I had one client that I said, okay, we're going to have an innovation process. And I think one, maybe two people actually spontaneously broke out in hives as soon as they heard the word process, because it was so counter to the company's culture and to their view that process stifles innovation. And so we had a conversation around, like, okay, here's what I mean by process. I understand what you hear when you hear the word. What is a better word? And so we eventually got to playbook. We're going to talk about our innovation playbook. And it smoothed everything right over. But had I, you know, we kept going with innovation process, I guarantee as soon as, you know, I left the company and left the team, they were going to be in for some hard months and then probably shut down again. So that customization, that empathy, that really understanding the people and building for the people is so important in the work that I do.
One last question. When you say it's so important for the people, in your view, who are these people? Who should be involved in innovation across different types of companies?
Without question, the CEO and the most senior leaders, because they are the ones who can make the final decision. They're the ones who can create the space for innovation to work. So there has to be engagement, not just lip service, actual engagement from the top layers of the business. Then I think certainly everybody else in the organization needs to have an opportunity to understand how they can plug into innovation if they want. So the common mandate of innovation is everyone's job. Well, what if you don't want it to be your job? There are people like that. Don't make people innovate if they don't want to. But if people do want to innovate, give them a way to do that. Give them a roadmap for that. And there need to be people who own innovation, who move it forward, who embrace it and make it happen. And also ideas can come from anywhere. So give people that opportunity to continue to think and to create, and a path to move those things forward.
Perfect. Robyn, it's been wonderful speaking with you. If people want to find out more about you and the work that you do, what's the best place they can go to find out more?
Best place to go is to Mile Zero's website, which is mile zero spelled out, ZERO.IO. And there you can read all about the work that I do. You can read more about my background, and most importantly, you can grab time on my calendar to schedule a call and to learn more.
Perfect. Robyn, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they are backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.